Welcome to the Monetization Show podcast, where we talk to the greatest minds in media, tech, and telecommunications. This show explores strategies and lessons for driving profitable growth with direct-to-consumer business models. I'm your host, Vijay Sajja, founder and CEO of Evergent. My goal is to bring you specific and proven strategies straight from industry leaders that will help you solve your greatest challenges at the intersection of direct-to-consumer business models, evolving user preferences, market and competitive pressures. Welcome. Today, we are joined by Anil Jain, a transformation leader and a tech executive at Google Cloud. He drives innovation in AI, ML, and cloud technologies across consumer industries like media, telecom, gaming, retail, several other consumer industries, right? So with over 25 years of experience, Anil has shaped video landscape through leadership roles at Brightco and Unicorn Media, which he helped to sell successfully. He also is a founder of Brightmonk Innovation and an advisor to numerous startups. So I worked with Anil from the time he was at Brightco. We have battle scars in helping many customers across the globe. Anil brings a wealth of expertise, and we're excited to hear his insights in the future of media and technology. He brings both perspectives from a supplier to one industry to now he's enabling many industries, providing critical infrastructure to a lot of companies, right? Welcome to the show, Anil.
Glad to be here, Vijay. Good to speak with you.
So first question, tell me real quick, why did you agree to be on this podcast?
Well, of course, anything for you, Vijay. And in reality, we've gone back over a decade now. I think we've together watched the evolution of both the media and the telco or operator industries. During that time, you and I have often chatted when we meet about the evolution of these industries, the transformation being wrought by cloud, data, and AI. And when we say it on a daily basis, it kind of sounds a little cliche, but it's real, right? It's actually happening. And I think the best way to kind of share perspective is to have conversations, right? And so happy to have this one with you.
Thanks again. You have had front row seat to multiple industry transformations across media, entertainment, telco, and other consumer industries. What shifts you have seen that kind of surprised you and maybe not surprised you if you look back a year or two? And so maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, I think across all of the industries that my team supports and works on across the globe, we've seen this ongoing journey to a cloud data and AI driven transformation that's been underway. And in many cases, no matter how large the customer, the organization might be, the reality is they face some very disruptive threats, in some cases, existential threats, right? Not to be too provocative about it, but I think that the reality is the dynamics in each industry have led to scenarios where the most progressive companies from the board level on down have said our mandate to transform, right? And they've set aggressive agendas, and those that are doing it are seeing significant results, right? Meanwhile, they've seen peers and competitors kind of dismantle, fall apart, lose market share, et cetera. So I think it's a very, very important area of focus for every organization. I think every consulting firm you talk to talks about digital transformation. It's really fundamental business transformation that's underway. And so to your question about over the last couple of years, I think the thing that is fascinating and surprising is how quickly the world, right, every industry, every organization, private sector, public sector, has embraced generative AI. And now, of course, agentic AI. It's happening much faster than the adoption of any other step change technology. And I think that is really meaningful. And AI is going to shape the future of all of these industries.
Right. Great. And so, in terms of how they monetize the content and any type of digital service for that matter, when Netflix launched advertising, it was kind of a advertising theater. It was big news, but content monetization through advertising has been there for a long time. That's how it started in the beginning, right? Yeah. It's nothing new. Now, hybrid monetization models are pretty much guaranteed. Everybody's experimenting with. And in terms of hyper personalization, and what other models you are seeing, and also we are likely to see.
Yeah. So I think there's a few things in there, right? So let me separate it out. I think you're absolutely right. The combination of both kind of ad supported and subscriber based monetization has been around for a long time. I mean, effectively, that's linear television, right? In some sense. And as over the last 15 years, we've shifted to this direct to consumer paradigm with streaming and OTT, media organizations, I think, have all realized that they don't have a handle on the overall cost model, right? The operating cost model. What are the investments? How do you stay on top of innovation? How do you invest in content that ultimately is key? How do you super serve your audiences and do all of that in a way that allows you to not just cover your costs, but be profitable and grow? And as we've seen, very few direct to consumer businesses, media businesses on their own are in fact profitable. And so I think that led the likes of Netflix and others to realize that in order to continue to invest heavily in the areas they need to invest in, like original content, new experiences, that they need to expand their monetization, right? So that's what's led to hybrid monetization, fast channels, a number of different things. But I think, as you said, this has been going on for years. In fact, in direct to consumer streaming, I remember when I was at Unicorn Media, we worked with CBS All Access, right? Which was kind of a novel, innovative launch at that time from CBS, which of course part of Paramount. And that was, they varied the content availability and freshness and access based on whether you paid for the ad tier or an ad-free tier. And they showed that you could execute on this, right? And they did it across iOS and Android at the time. These were early years, but that's like 15 years old. Okay.
Right.
I think as we look now to the current environment and where we're headed, you hit on this point specifically. We've been on this journey, and you've heard me talk about this before, since the dawn of the web, the dream of kind of real one-to-one personalization. But it's been 25 years, and we haven't really gotten there, except now more than ever, we have this opportunity to really drive real hyper-personalization. The technology exists. It's now a matter of, can we organize the value chains that deliver experiences to consumers in ways that will allow for successful hyper-personalization. And I think you can take that in many, many different directions. And when that happens, where I, as an organization, whether I'm a media company or some other kind of direct-to-consumer business, when I can truly hyper-personalize what I am delivering to you, in fact, it might even be when I'm creating or developing on the fly for you, right? Because it's personalized and I'm super serving you. That will open up different opportunities for new types of monetization, pricing. It could be dynamic pricing, special offers, commerce integrations, microtransactions. And so that's the world we're heading to. And before, the complexity of managing that, I think, scared a lot of organizations. But now you have not only the technology to do it, but also AI can help you manage the complexity.
Now, what you say makes a lot of sense. I think the hyper-personalization, especially the IP-based delivery, unlike broadcast media in the past, you know who it is on the other end, right? I agree with you. I think we're just starting this journey. Once you know who it is, and so many times advertising, even today in digital advertising, and it's like, it feels like they're barking up the wrong tree. So they're sending stuff that the other side may not care. So there's so many ways to optimize. And a lot of these things were talked about even in the traditional TV, like T-commerce and telescoping and things like that. But a lot of those are possible and can be done cost effectively. And as you're saying, like, to create value along the way for the consumer, not necessarily taking advantage of his eyeballs, but it's creating a better experience. It's the hyper-personalization is the key. I agree. And also, we're just starting this journey, right? So you mentioned something in your last answer, is the push to profitability, right?
Yeah.
And I think, now more than ever, even at the recent NAB, the mood has shifted. I think over the past year, many of the streaming services are looking to, hey, it's not, they want to grow responsibly, right? It's an
Yeah.
acquisition. They still want to acquire users, but really paying attention to, are we making money? Is this a good business? Is there a good economics? What changes are you seeing in terms of their technology purchases and the way they think about doing these transformations and from a profitability perspective?
Yeah. I think this is a really important topic of discussion. I
Right.
think several years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was these analysts that watched the industry came out and said more or less everybody that's moving into streaming needs to own the technology stack.
Right.
That's important. And as you've been in this industry for a long time, you see
Yeah.
like the pendulum swing back and forth in terms of the ownership of do I need to have do I need to own the technology, develop the technology, manage it, et cetera, or can I outsource it? And it varies by organization. But I think 2 years ago, those same analysts showed up and said, okay, maybe we had it wrong, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the reality is very few media companies can own the technology stack because it's not their core competency. And the amount you have to invest in the advancement and the continuous innovation of that technology does not allow for those organizations to actually equally invest where they actually are differentiated, which is going to be in the content, right? And the things surrounding the content. So
Yeah.
I think a shift in media organizations is like, how do we unwind our ownership of this technology stack, and who can we work with that can serve our needs and be agile, but handle it right and more cost effectively? Or if we are going to maintain an ownership, there's very few companies like this, obviously, but they're very large. They're like, how do we do this efficiently in a way?
Yeah.
And by the way, I think that's the conversation that's happening, but there's another conversation that I think needs to be had. And I don't know that it's happening at the level that it should, which is this question of what does a media company look like in the future, right?
Right.
Because the way I put it to my good friends and colleagues, we work together and we have for many years, is if we stepped outside of our current roles and decided we wanted to start a net new media company, would it look anything like the large traditional media organizations that exist today? And the answer is absolutely no, right? We would use different tools and technologies. Our strategy for developing, creating, sourcing, acquiring content would be different. The nature of the content itself would be multi-format, multi-platform. I think the monetization models would be different. The use of which vendors and technology providers, what does that media supply chain look like? What does the distribution chain look like? All of these things would be different, right? And so that reality exists, which means you have an established ecosystem, and then you have an emerging ecosystem, and you have an emerging creator economy, and all of those things are going to compete for the same finite amount of attention that can be monetized. And so I think if you're in the media business today, you need to be thinking about those other things as how do I embrace them? How do I service those emerging opportunities? Do I change the way in which I'm doing things? And I think that's hard when you're an established, entrenched organization with, tens, if not 100 years of history. And I think that's one of the major disruptions that is heading our way.
I know you work with many of the media companies in helping them. What's the roadmap from, okay, they know on where they need to be, right? And then there's a roadmap on how to get there. Is there one or two that comes to your mind that's actually have a good roadmap and a good plan from, okay, here's where we are. We've been around for a long time. But technology is available that we can be at a different place so we can actually create better value for our consumers. Are there one or two examples you can share?
I think that it really varies based on the space they're in. I think I'll just point to a couple, and this is not comprehensive by any means, okay? But you can, like, within the context of what they do, we've been working with Fox Sports for years, right? My entire time at Google Cloud. And I think what's really interesting is Fox Sports, obviously a sports broadcaster that is a leading sports media organization covering, US as well as global sports content. They have embraced the use of innovative technology and reduced their reliance on traditional vendors early on, right? Before even this kind of generative AI explosion happened, right, in the last couple of years. And I think that progressive nature has allowed them to drive greater efficiencies, do better storytelling, provide much more satisfaction for their employees who would like to be in the storytelling business, not in the hunting for content business, right? And I think that that's an example within their niche of a organization that is embracing technology to really enhance the product that they're developing, right? And the experience of how to do that. So that's one. And there's many other examples there you can talk about with Fox Sports. You can look at sports leagues, right? Major League Baseball has been a significant partner that we've worked with for many years now. And their use of data and AI to really not only enhance the storytelling around baseball and the content experience for people who like to watch and understand all of the statistics and details, but to turn around and use that data also to help consumers and fans curate their own experiences and find the content they want to find. I think is an innovative use of technology, which again, all of these aren't changing the nature of their business. They're using technology to enhance and make it better, right? And then the last thing I would say is, I think that we're starting to see companies leverage personalization technologies for kind of AI-driven recommendations, AI-driven content discovery to enhance the experience that you have as a viewer and a subscriber so that you actually have a much more fulfilling experience in your interaction with the streaming service, as an example, that creates a lot higher propensity to watch. It creates greater retention, mitigates churn, which are, of course, metrics that everyone cares about. So I think there's many, many examples of this. And I know one of the things you want to talk about at some point is the sphere, but I think that the reality is that is with a traditional like broadcaster, sports league, traditional media company. Then you have new immersive kind of experiences that are emerging, and that's a whole new world of opportunity that's opening up.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think one example we have seen very close is the NBA. How they use technology to create that superior experience to the fan. Right. And, it's really an amazing team. I've been to the NBA Tech Summit last couple of years, and, what an amazing job they do. And really bring in the who and who of the Silicon Valley to their thing. And more importantly, really, when a fan, based on who the fan is, if they the favorite team and their view of the app is completely different based on the fan, and then a lot is changing, and it really opened my eyes after we started working with NBA and how tech can be used. So recently, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that the NBA is a great example. We obviously know the same people there. I think one of the things that is really the commonality across all of these is it comes down to the leadership and the talent involved, right? There are individuals in all of the organizations we just talked about who have really been innovative and progressive and understand how to take established organizations through this transformation and change management. And I think whether it's in media or in any other industry, that is essentially probably the most important critical success factor.
You're so right. It boils down to people, just it's you touched on the content discovery also, right? I mean, recently Google published that people spend up to 3 hours weekly searching for content. I'm one of them, by the way. It's like, you want to watch something? Okay, where do I find it? How is Google Cloud helping media companies leverage this multimodal AI to solve both content discovery and monetization challenges?
Yeah. This is a real problem. I think we've often referred to it as, one is the paradox of choice. When you have a service and you have too many choices, you don't know how to get to what you really want. And then the other is, I know what you want. And this just happened to me 3 days ago, where the problem got more complex because it was optimizing across what my daughter, my son, and my wife each are interests. We're trying to find the thing. And then we finally agreed on a piece of content, a movie, but then we had to figure out where it was available, right? And I think that this first world problem that we have is, in fact, a pretty significant problem, because not only do we have consumers unsatisfied, often this will lead to churn or abandonment, right? Forget it, we'll do something else. And so I think it's in everyone's best interest to change that. So within Google Cloud, obviously I talked about recommendations earlier. I think recommendations and search are two critical areas of investment that are truly leveraging the power of data and AI to actually improve the user experience, so that, one, on the recommendation side, what is actually presented to you is curated based on all the data signals that you've provided about you and your interests and your watching history, et cetera. That's pretty straightforward. It's continuously evolving and getting better, right? Because you can, the more different sources of data you can leverage about the consumer, the better and the more you know about the content, the better you can bring those together to identify what are high propensity viewing items.
Yeah.
The other side of that is search, which is, how do I empower the user to not have to think about structuring their search query or fitting within or conforming to structured metadata? Instead, allow me to use natural language to actually find what I want. So I want to, and more than that, allowing me to search in a way that is independent of like actor and title, but it could be, I'm looking for that movie that took place in San Francisco. It was a vampire film, and there was a scene where they're driving across the Golden Gate Bridge in a red convertible. Like, why doesn't the system know that? Because it should understand what's in the content. The third dimension beyond that is, how do I now use AI and like superpowered AI assistants, right, that actually understand the library of content and can say, hey, Vijay, what do you feel like today?
Yeah.
Right? Let me have a conversation with you and ascertain what I might want to present. And the example of, you had a long day, it's been a long week, it's Friday evening, you're tired, you've been traveling, you just want something lighthearted, right? I suggest following comedies, because I know you like these actors and you like these films. This is one that just entered our library that I think you're going to love. I mean, that's like having a concierge that proactively comes to you and says, I know you're going to like this, right?
Yeah. No, that's so compelling, which in turn creates a better experience, less propensity to churn. Once somebody goes away, it's hard to bring them back. One thing you mentioned is really sometimes too much choice is a problem.
It is a problem. Yeah.
And they did experiments, actually. People, if they were to choose from 40 different types of jams versus 3 different types of jams, they did more sales when they had only the choice of 3. Yeah, I think creating that better experience is so critical. We're also using Google technology to actually predict what the user is likely to buy and not confuse him with 40 different choices. It's next topic really is in live sports. At Evergent, we kind of know from experience, because it's a digital stadium, right? There's no limitation on how many people can come in, right? So we have seen 70 million transactions in a live sports event in Asia. When India and Australia play cricket, India is a small country. A lot of people show up to watch the game at the digital stadium, right? So how is Google infrastructure evolving to support these intense demand moments, right? I mean, it's unlike what we have seen before, right? It's really the peak concurrency, people coming in and wanting to watch, and for sports and live events. Maybe you can speak a bit about how the infrastructure is evolving to support.
Sure. I think that, let me speak to it in a couple of ways. One, of course, Google continues to invest very heavily in new data centers, new increased capacity, new zones and regions around the world are coming up every year, as well as investing heavily in kind of our undersea cables and our global network. I mean, I don't remember what the exact number, like the vast majority of internet traffic goes across the Google network, right?
Okay.
So we have our Google global network is kind of unparalleled, right? And our infrastructure scales dramatically already. I mean, we're talking about live sports, but the reality is in retail, which is a massive business for us, we've been supporting Black Friday, Cyber Monday for years, right? And we have taken that same kind of operational preparedness capability and capacity planning and ramping kind of expertise and applied it to streaming events as well, right? And some of the ones you're referring to, we have supported. I think that it's a multi-dimensional thing, right? I think there is the infrastructure readiness and the scale. And I think for those, that is something that the public cloud providers, the infrastructure providers kind of are some of the few organizations in the world that have that capacity. And we certainly stand by kind of what we're doing at Google on a continuous investment basis. But I think beyond that, you have to build intelligence and predictive kind of capabilities into all of our products. And so for us, as an AI first company, we've been doing it even before the last couple of years. We've embedded machine learning and AI in kind of all of our products, right? And so our ability to predict scaling events and spin up resources and do a lot of the intelligent work required to ensure that all of the technology at different layers of the stack are ready to support the scaling and the tens of millions of transactions is built into the product set. But I will say that, and I think this is important to call out, that ultimately it also comes down to what is the operational team and plan, because like the events, if you're talking about India, Australia, cricket, it's not like you can predict there's going to be a massive amount. You also don't want to over provision capacity so much that you're wasting money, right? How do you do that intelligently? How do you use different forms of data to predict? How do you manage the fact that a lot of these people all show up at the same time? That's really the peak event. And you can't give them a bad experience, right? You'll get a lot of frustrated people. So I think that there's it's a multi-dimensional kind of problem. I think the infrastructure is able to support it. I think the products are able to support it. Now it's a matter of how do you operationalize it as an organization to leverage that infrastructure and leverage the data to actually plan and be ready to respond to that scale, right? With the minimum amount of dissatisfaction for your consumers.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. You also oversee telecom domain, right? So media companies, many of them are new to the direct-to-consumer business and new to the back office support systems traditionally called, right? And AT&T has been doing that for 100 years. Some of these systems, especially on the telco side, they've been around for a long time. A lot of the systems were designed during the time of regulation where changes happened at a very slow pace, right? I mean, it would take 6 months to get approval from a public utility commission to change the price on your telephone line or whatever, right? So things have dramatically changed for them, right? It's there are many around the table eating their lunch. So they all feel compelled that they have to transform and they have to be more agile and nimble, come up with a new product, etc. What approaches would you recommend for these executives that are faced with 20, 30-year-old systems, but they need to really launch these new revenue streams? But some of these transformations could be high risk, right? What would be your recommendation for them? How do they think about it? Right?
Yeah, I think that telecom in particular, globally, these companies are part of the critical essential infrastructure, right? That everyone relies on. And so they have to be very risk averse because they can't jeopardize the availability of their networks and their service. The problem that they deal with, unfortunately, is that no consumer sings praises about their communications provider, right? Everyone complains. It's a tough business to be in, but a very, very important one. You characterized it very well. Obviously, you've been in this space for a long time of this kind of entrenched set of systems that these telcos or the CSPs are reliant on. but they need to improve their agility, their flexibility, their responsiveness, and they want to take advantage of new capabilities that their old systems can't support. I think that there are many different, there's no panacea, there's no like silver bullet for this. So there's multiple different things that need to be done. One is, I think many of the vendors that are providing these systems, they're large, established, older vendors, and then there's the newer, more agile vendors like Evergent, for example, that vendors need to really focus on making it easy for these customers to embrace new data and AI driven cloud native solutions, and have to work hand in hand with organizations that can handle the business process and change management piece of it, because that's critical. I think that the telcos and customers are where I've seen them be successful is they're implementing some of these solutions on a new businesses, right? New networks they're spinning up that are not that can actually be built on a new stack, if you will, as opposed to, and then what you end up doing is you have a transition plan. Once you have something solid, robust, working, then you build a transition. I do think there is going to be a bit of ripping the Band-Aid off at some point, because you ultimately get to a place where the vendors that provide these systems are going to say, look, the future is all over here, and this is where we have to invest. And I can't continue to maintain this old stuff, because while there's an existing line of business there, there's no growth. So eventually the vendors working with the telcos, the systems integrators, and even the public cloud providers are going to have to orchestrate together how to transition. And I think that's underway now. I think it's a multi-year journey, but I think it has to happen. And your question was, how do you address this problem? I think you have to address it very carefully, because the new technology is not the issue. The issue is how embedded and intertwined the old systems are.
I think you're right. There's no silver bullet, and there's one path you outlined. When you're thinking of a new service, maybe think of a new stack, get the experience, and then look at how you can look at. And then, I recently did a podcast. It's going to come out in a month or two with Ewan. He's the CEO of Astro. It's like the Comcast of Malaysia. We worked together on a big transformation there. And Ewan actually took this approach. We first started with their streaming service, even though they're a traditional service provider, right? And then they had a 20-year-old system. And then we migrated them off of that onto cloud on our platform, right? So two things he mentioned that really struck with me is that one is save to invest, right? They want to create value to the consumer. These systems are also costing them a lot of money, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And they say 50% of what is costing, that money goes into really enhancing the product. They do a lot of content creation themselves in Malaysia, right? So that's one thing that which is in line with what you're saying. The second thing is the flexibility he needs, because the market changed completely, right? They used to be the only game in town. There are so many players now, right? So many choices for the consumer. For them to really react to market feedback quickly, right? That agility and nimbleness, right? So I said, Ewan, why do it? It's very risky. He said, Vijay, if we don't do it, we may die.
Yeah.
Which is point you made.
Existential issue. Yeah.
Existential issue. And so it's one thing philosophically, if somebody points a gun to my head and said, pick a religion, I would pick Buddhism, obviously. That's personal. So one thing that Buddha said, all structures are impermanent.
Yeah.
To your point of these legacy vendors, they've been there for a long time. They also have to change and help the customer, put the customer first. It may look like solid, rigid system. It's been there, but all structures are impermanent. I love that quote from Buddha, but yeah. So good stuff. Let's talk about MSG, which is, and I've been to their sphere. You probably have been there. Amazing experience, right? It's and I'm not a big fan of Vegas, but that's one thing I'm going to take my wife to go see, right? We work with them. We're fortunate. You're working with them very closely. We're also fortunate to work with them with their sports teams, and they have this Gotham app for the New York market. One of the things we see them really look at innovation is that combining offline and online, right?
Yeah.
Meaning that how same user that consumes the streaming service are really combining their experience in their, whether they're stadiums in New York area or Sphere in this one, and how are you with the AI and really knowing the user, and how do you see Google helping them really give a great experience in both places, online and offline?
Yeah, I think this connected physical and digital experience is something that multiple industries are going through. In retail, they have this term, I'm not really fond of it, it's called phygital, right? And they used to talk about, and they still talk about omni-channel, right? But it's really about a unified or connected experience, whether you're in the store or online. Very similarly, in what you're talking about with the Sphere or Madison Square Garden or any of the other forms of media, whether they're music concerts or festivals or
Right.
sports tournaments, and all of these things have both that kind of in-venue physical experience as well as the digital experience. And even the digital experience, there's also maybe a broadcast experience, right? So there's multiple different forms of engagement. And I think what all of these organizations need to do is map that customer experience and say, how do I meet the customer where they're at, depending on what the experience is. Now, our work with the Sphere, of course, is really about the kind of game-changing use of AI, generative media AI to, in the case of the Wizard of Oz that was talked about and showcased at Google Cloud Next, taking 100-year-old content and using AI to prepare it for the world's largest, highest resolution screen in an immersive experience, which is pretty phenomenal. So I also recommend that people go. And when The Wizard of Oz is released in the end of August, I think a lot of us will be there. So we're very excited about that work. But I think to your point, we talked about Major League Baseball, the NBA. You can talk about, pick it could be a label provider, it could be a concert promoter. Ultimately, the consumer should move seamlessly through their physical and digital experiences across platforms and across moments. Could be me by myself on my phone when I'm in transit, or it could be at home in a lean back experience, in front of my connected TV, or it could be even in a social setting at a sports bar with a bunch of friends, or it could be the entire experience from the moment I buy the ticket and go through a frictionless access process to the physical experience in the venue, not just watching the content, but everything surrounding it, as well as the digital overlays and tools, because I will use my device in my hand while I'm actually engaging, right? All of those things need to be complemented. And I think where this comes down to is, do I have a singular view of the consumer?
Yeah.
That's a unified singular view of Vijay across all of the experiences. And have I given you the incentive through the value of creating for you to actually engage as that known user, so that you have the best frictionless experience, that you have access to the content, you get the hyper-personalization, so that if I'm watching a basketball game and I care about the Phoenix Suns, then I'm going to get all the additional supplementary content to support my experience through the app or through whatever I'm watching, right? There's so many different layers of this, but it all comes down to having a unified singular view of the consumer, where the contract between me as an organization and you as a consumer is one where I'm going to give you immense value that super serves you, that creates affinity, loyalty, and a lot of just enriched experience, which will allow you, which will incentivize you to make sure that I have all the data I need to provide you that hyper-personalization. And that in and of itself, certainly we talk about improved satisfaction and value for the consumer, but it's also retention and churn mitigation, it's brand affinity. And then all of that opens up opportunities for cross-sell, upsell, deeper segmentation that, oh, for the super fans, I'm going to offer something exclusive that they're going to open their wallets and pay for. But the more casual fan will also have a great experience, and I'll monetize them at different levels. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Lots of good stuff here. Final question. You've written about how the next decade in media will be defined by the disruption of content creation, which is something you mentioned just now also, right? It's just as the last decade was defined by disruption of distribution. Right?
Yeah.
Looking into the future, what excites you most about how cloud and AI will shape the next generation of media experiences that we have not discussed yet?
Yeah, I think we could spend a whole podcast just on that, right? I think it's easier, right? Because it's all exploratory. I think inherently media creation will become increasingly cloud native and AI augmented, right? And that's a spectrum, right? You've seen the things where there are like fully AI productions and studios now, and that's there and it's new and it'll serve its purpose. But the entire spectrum of the creative endeavor will be AI augmented in some way, because whether it's to draw greater efficiencies, whether it's to empower creators to unleash their creativity in different ways, it'll accelerate the production and the ability to tell better stories or give better experiences. It's also going to allow greater reach, right? So if I'm a creative team and I produce an amazing piece of content, my goal may be that I want that content to be accessible to as many people around the world as possible. So you have dubbing, you have subbing and dubbing, translation, lip animation. You have the ability to take that content and, depending on the parameters I give it, package it for different formats. Oh, it's made for the big screen, but now I want a vertical video version. I want to change the duration. I want one that becomes an audio only podcast. There's all of these things that I shouldn't have to have creative teams go and then create the new formats, right? AI can help me do, which of course also ties back into greater reach, greater personalization, greater opportunities for monetization. So these are the things that I think we're going to see coming. And I will tell you that you and I talk about our kids all the time, right? The next generations, this is like a no-brainer for them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Anil, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure the users will have a blast listening to it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's a lot of fun always talking to you, Vijay. I always learn something. And I look forward to seeing you at the next big event.
Sounds good. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning into the Monetization Show. I hope you found today's episode insightful and that it inspired you with ideas that could power your next big move. If you would like to share your thoughts or questions about the ideas we discussed today, do drop a comment on LinkedIn or wherever you found us on social media. Until next time, this is Vijay Sajja, wishing you continued success in your monetization journey.